welcome to Escaping the Chains podcast, brought to you by Delivered Media. If you haven't had a chance yet, please go to YouTube and subscribe to our channel. We're also on Apple Podcasts. If you could go over there, follow us, give us a good review, that would be great. And Spotify as well, do the same thing. Listen to an episode, give us a review. We would greatly appreciate it. We're really pleased with all of the support and so grateful that we have gotten so far. So a lot of times we hear people say it's relationship over religion when it comes to Jesus and God and that stuff, and I couldn't agree with that more. But you have got to, just like with any friendship or any other kind of relationship, it's about spending time with the person to get closer to them and understanding their voice, and listening. And I wanted to dig into some stories. I'm going to talk about when I had a heart attack and some other things that really made me realize how important it is to have an actual relationship with Jesus Christ. It's something, it's good to, it's necessary to do a lot of things, get together with other believers, do Bible studies and everything, but they cannot a pastor, the leader of a Bible study, they can't give you a relationship with Jesus Christ. You've got to work on that on your own. And it's, let's just dig in. First off, I am a recovery coach, peer support specialist, and part of my job is to work with people that are getting out of substance abuse disorder or substance misuse disorder, and work with them and try to help them, through the steps of just staying sober, getting housing, and that's kind of what I do in one of my day jobs. And I had a guy that I was working with, and we worked together quite a bit, and he was doing really well. And I got a call one night that he was at a house and had overdosed, and they didn't think he was alive. So, at that time, it was what I did. That's the kind of stuff that I did. I went to the house to, just kind of talk with everybody, make sure they were okay. And he was definitely gone. And while we were sitting down there, the coroner and the police were doing their thing. And as they, and these things sting because we've lost a lot of amazing souls to, the fentanyl crisis and fentanyl poisoning, and, people that we're close with, we talk to and consider friends. And this was one of those situations, but it was a little different. I've never got called to the place, and as I was driving there, I was praying and talking to God, because a lot of times people will tell you God doesn't give you more than you can handle. Well, this life does, and we need God and a relationship with God to get through some of the things that we face. So, I show up at the house, and I'm talking with everybody, making sure they're okay. Not sure, I'm not really okay. And as the coroner has him in the bag and everything, and starts to take him out of the house, I just kind of put my hand out, like praying for him. It was, it really, like, there's no other way to put it, but it sucked. It was an awful situation, just horrific. And the coroner asked if we needed a minute, and I was like, yeah. And we went up and put our hands on him and just prayed, and I wasn't even sure what, how to pray in that situation. And I was crushed. A lot of people were crushed. It impacted and hurt. A lot of people were just devastated. And after that, I was on my way home, and I was crying for a second, and then I was just numb, and I was just talking to God like I'm done, like I can't do this anymore. And I was rushing to get back to the house, and I don't know why. I just didn't want to be in the car. And as I was sitting on the front porch, I, going through, all this stuff was replaying in my head, memories and just, everything that had just happened. I just called out to God, and I was like, God, I need you now, and I felt his presence. And it was very necessary for me in that moment, because I don't think I could have went on in that field. And it was still hard, but I couldn't have done it, if I didn't have God to lean on. And I bring that up because there's been so many times in my life where there's been failures or I've just straight sinned and made mistakes, whatever it is. I've sat on the porch and I've just been like, God, and I've just talked to him, or I've just sit there in silence and tried to receive whatever it is that he was trying to give to me. And that is so important in this world because life can be tough. And if you don't have that source to lean on, I really don't know how people do it. My daughter, one of my daughters, uh, can get scared real easy at the house, and she got a hold of me one time, and she was like, "Hey, I think somebody's in the house, and you need to get home as soon as you can." And I was like, "Well, what are you doing?" She was like, "I'm just hiding in my bedroom. Get here as soon as you can." And I was like, "Nobody's in the house," because she's done this several times. But um, when I got home, she yeah, I opened the door and she came out of her bedroom and was talking to me. She wasn't scared anymore. And I hadn't even checked the house or anything. I mean, she asked me to check the house, but she wasn't scared anymore because her father was home and she knew everything was going to be okay. And she knew that I was going to cover her, protect her, or whatever she needed. She knew that. Well, I, one night, this has been a couple years ago, I had been having some chest pain. It felt like indigestion. It's hard to explain, but I couldn't get comfortable. And, I couldn't sleep that night because I couldn't get comfortable. It was a Saturday night and it was all night. And I went ahead, one of my daughters had a friend spend the night. So there was three of them at the house and we went to church. And at church, I felt really bad. I was just like uncomfortable. My chest was hurting. It was in the middle of it. Just, it was very uncomfortable. So afterwards, I took the girls to pick up food and I told them I was going to go to the emergency room. And they didn't think much about it. I really didn't think much about it. I thought I had indigestion or something. So I dropped them off and I went to the emergency room. And another thing with my job is I used to do emergency room responses if somebody had overdosed and been Narcaned back, or if they hit on the scale that they might be struggling, we would go in and talk to them. So we're kind of familiar with like the emergency department's process. So when I got there, I told them what was going on, and I knew that something was kind of bad because they didn't get my insurance card. They didn't do any of the stuff they normally do. They brought a wheelchair out and they wheeled me to the back. And I was like, "Do you guys need my insurance or anything?" They were like, "We'll get it in a second." And they took me back to this, one of the rooms, and they start plugging. It's a little bit frantic, and they start taping stuff to my chest for the EKG, and the doctor. They get the EKG thing done, and the doctor comes in, and he's like, "Hey, if we have to fly you out of here, where do you want to go?" And I'm like, "What? Like, fly me out of here for what?" And he was like, "Well, there's something going on with your heart, but I need to know." And we decided where I wanted to go if I had to get flown out. And there was a few people in the room. I had people touching me and asking questions, and one of the girls asking questions. I looked at her. I said, "You guys don't need my insurance information or anything like that." She said, "We're going to get to it in a second." And I could hear the doctor in the hallway saying, "We have a stent or a stem patient." And I asked her, I said, "What does that mean?" And she said, "Well, you're having a heart attack." And I was like, "I'm having a heart attack?" And I was like, "That's what that feels like?" And she was like, "Well, they can feel a lot of different ways." And I remember looking at her and I'm like, "Is it like life threatening? Am I going to, how bad is it?" And she looked at me and she was honest. She was like, "We don't know how bad it is. We've got to get you flown out of here to some place that can, but better understand like what's going on and get it and take care of fast." And in that moment, I was just like, man, I was thinking about my daughters and some other things, and it was very intense to say the least, and it was a touch overwhelming. But I remember I was just like, "God, I need you now." And I could just feel from all the times on the porch and talking to him and needing him, I could just feel he was with me because I have a relationship with him. And when I felt him in the room, I was at peace. I was okay. He didn't, I didn't know if I was going to live or die, but I knew that I was, my father had entered the room just like my daughter. Like once my father was there, God, I knew that no matter what happened, like I'm okay. And I called a couple of my friends. Cody was one of them, and he had just actually, his wedding was the day before, and I was the best man. And he's like on the phone. He's like, "Man, why aren't you freaking out? What's going on?" And it was like I told him, I said, I'm just going to go through this process. I didn't really have a lot to say, and I had to call my daughters, I was trying not to get choked up. I love them so much, and had to call my mom, like all of these things that I had to do. And then they wheeled me to a helicopter, and I was like, oh my goodness, what in the world? So I was on this helicopter, and it was crazy because it was in Marion, the town where I do a lot of work and where I was born and raised. And the helicopter was going over the community that, I've done a lot of damage in when I was younger, and even some since I was saved, but like the community that I've also poured my heart into and really cared about. And I could just see things that were familiar. And it was a really surreal moment. And I kept talking to God through that process. And, I was texting with my daughters because I didn't want them worried, but it's a weird thing when you don't know like what's going on with you and what the outcome is going to be, trying to even process that. And that's another thing is like, if I didn't have God in that moment, I don't know like how stressed and freaked out I would have been, but but God, he was there, he showed up. And I ended up going to, a hospital in Fort Wayne. They put a stent in my heart, and I had to wait to get results back on how bad the damage was to my heart. And as stuff was coming back, they kept telling me it was okay. So it wasn't, it was just a stent, and everything else looked pretty good. And a few days later, I was done, I was checked out, and I could not wait because, guys, I could not stand sitting still and having stuff in my arms and I can't move. It was tough for me because I bounce around a lot. This is about as calm as you'll see me is right now. So the reason I wanted to tell you this is because it's so important to have a relationship with God to where when stuff feels like it's falling apart, when you feel like you may be dying, something's going on with your kids, you're in a situation and you're just like, this is more than I can possibly handle. It is so valuable to have the resource that is God and a relationship with him, and just to be able to be like, God, I need you now. Jesus Christ, I need you now, and feel him show up, because it's similar to my daughter. That's why I told that story, is like when her father was home, she wasn't worried anymore. It didn't, even if there was stuff in the house, she wasn't worried anymore because she knew her father would have it covered. And that's how I felt in the emergency room on that drive home that I was telling you about. It's so, and all of the time I've been saved for 12 years, and I haven't been perfect in that time or anything like that, but all of those conversations I've had with God, I've come to him when I'm weak, when I'm broken, when I'm crying, when I'm happy, when I'm celebrating. I've always tried to make a point to come to him and talk to him. And for me, I say the porch because that's where it happens a lot, and just let him into my life. And that's something that, like I said, all these things are important, but you can go to church, but if you don't have a relationship with God, these things are going to be just as tough because you're going to just have people to talk to. You can go to your groups and everything like that, but if you don't figure out the relationship with God, you're going to have people to talk to, which is amazing, very important. It's a huge part of my recovery in my life. But the relationship with God is the most important thing, because when stuff really hits the fan, being able to call on him is something that I can't describe to you if you haven't experienced it. And if you haven't, I just encourage you to really, really dig into that relationship. And I know people say, well, I'm busy, and yes, you should be reading your Bible because that's his word. but in prayer. And I don't even know if you call it prayer with me. It's like in these conversations with God and me opening up to him and asking him to examine me and all of these things. Like I've built a relationship that even when I'm at my lowest, even when I've made mistakes, even when the doctor says I don't know what your situation is right now, when I can call on him and I can feel him, I have peace. And I know that the situation's going to work out. And it may not always be good, but I know that I can get through the stuff that's not good because I have a relationship with him. The most important thing that I can probably ever tell you is, work on that relationship with God. If you're struggling, especially with substance abuse, I would strongly encourage that you reach out and let some people into your life and try to find treatment and something that will work for you, because the devastation we've seen from that, and some of the worst things that I've had to go through is going to funerals and watching family members completely broken and brokenhearted, and a lot of them will never be the same because of the decision that someone made. And if that's where you're at in life right now, I really just would, beg you to reach out to somebody and, start to pray and try to find something, whether it's inpatient treatment, meetings, whatever may work for you, but put the stuff down, because we're losing a lot of friends. And I can tell you you don't come back. I haven't come back. The family doesn't come back 100% after something as devastating as that. So please reach out and ask for help. So this is Escaping the Chains podcast. We thank you so much for tuning in. We're very grateful for Delivered Media and everything they do. They put this whole thing together, and we just get to come in here and talk. Build that relationship with God. You are worth it. You have value, and because I've heard people say, "Well, I need to get my stuff together before I, come to church, talk to God, go to the cross." You don't. God wants you. Christ wants you just how you are, and you can come to him in that situation, because none of us are ever going to be 100% righteous and ready to go in the present, ready to just go, I'm going to go meet Jesus today. It's okay. Bring your stuff. He can handle it. He can help lift it off of you. He can help, start to create in you a new you that doesn't have to carry all of that stuff with you anymore. So you have a purpose. You are here for a reason, and don't let voices from people or whispers from the enemy make you believe that you don't have a purpose or value in this world, because you do. That's why you're here. You were designed with a purpose. Dream again. And so with that, we're going to go ahead and sign off. Please subscribe and follow us on, one of the things that we mentioned earlier. We are so grateful for all of you. We are so grateful. And just remember that God cares, and Jesus Christ wants a relationship with you. So go to him as you are.